How's everyone doing this evening? Excellent. So my name is Jasmin Agosto, and I am the Education and Community Outreach Manager here at the Hartford History Center at Hartford Public Library. Who's been here before? All right, okay. Excellent. So those of you that haven't been here before, welcome. On behalf of the History Center and the library team, I welcome you to the exhibition opening of A Home Away from Home, Greater Hartford's West Indian Diaspora. So welcome. As some of you may know, the Hartford History Center collects, preserves, and shares over 500,000 archival materials that shed light on Hartford's history, literature, and culture. We are an all-ages research space, have a robust online collection, host many exhibits, public programs, and educational outreach visits. And we hope that that as you learn more about us, you see us as your community resource. We are very interested in collecting more stories from Hartford's rich cultures, and we hope that you consider us when looking for resources that speak to the West Indian community in Hartford, as well as the stories that you may share and may consider archiving here for future generations. Please also feel free to reach out to me. I will give you my card if you're interested in your own group, organization, or youth learning more about archival research and our collections here, right here in your city. This evening, we will hear from Dr. Fiona Vernal, the writer and curator of A Home Away from Home. Dr. Vernal is an associate professor of history and Africana studies at the University of Connecticut. She is a native of Trelawney, Jamaica, and was raised in Trenton, New Jersey. She earned her BA in history with a certificate in African American studies from Princeton University and her MA and PhD from Yale. At UConn, her courses focus on pre-colonial and colonial Africa, the history of South Africa, slavery, and the African diaspora. The exhibition graphic design is by Stephanie Orts, and although the exhibition has a long list of sponsors, we want to be sure to acknowledge the significant role that the West Indian Social Club and UConn Humanities Institute did in making this exhibition possible. So we want to give them a great thanks for that. Yes. Now, we are very excited. A Home Away from Home will be in the Hartford History Center and the Hartford Public Library for the month of June in celebration of Caribbean Heritage Month. So we're really excited about that. And we have learned so much from the extraordinary research that Dr. Vernal has done and on and with the Greater Hartford West Indian community through original archival research and conducting, processing, and exhibiting oral histories, giving us a much more rich perspective, not only on the economic forces that brought much of the community to the city, but how the communities have rooted themselves here and developed a strong, influential, culturally vibrant presence in business, property ownership, education, sports, and social organization. Speaking of social organizations, we want to have a warm welcome to Richard Gordan, Esquire, president of the West Indian Social Club, who's going to give us a few brief words.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Some folks didn't respond. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. On behalf of my organization, the West Indian Social Club of Hartford Incorporated, we wish to extend thank you to the Hartford History Center, the Manchester Community College, Trinity College, University of Connecticut, and HPL, Hartford Public Library. And last but not least, Edson, who works cooperatively with Mr. Linroy Grant. As I look out among you this evening, I see a number of my members, starting with our treasurer, Ms. Judy Williams, Stand, Judy, and say hi. The Bennett family, who are in the front. And where's Mr. Bennett? Always in the bathroom. Too much information, I guess. There he is. One of our elder statesmen, Mr. Bennett. I believe Mr. Bennett celebrates his 95th birthday, 96 this year. And if I may borrow one of his jokes, about a year ago, someone asked him how he was doing. He said, "Everything works perfectly except my right knee." You can extend that analysis. I won't. But in any event, we are pleased to be here today, perhaps not large in numbers, but certainly in spirit. By us, I mean the West Indian Social Club. We have contributed mightily to what is termed the home away from home, the Jamaican or West Indian diaspora, if you will. I read somewhere earlier this last year that the Jamaican community specifically, and the West Indian community generally, is now the #1 immigrant population in the state of Connecticut. Isn't that interesting? Okay. For many decades, that distinction was attributed to or attributable to Italians. Then between 2000 and 2010, the Poles, and now it's the West Indians. That must mean something. I'll figure it out as we go along. But in any event, we're pleased to be here, and we're pleased to work in partnership with all the entities I just acknowledged. And we certainly look forward to maintaining this continued partnership. Thanks for having me. Enjoy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Before Dr. Vernal speaks, we would like to actually invite our special guests here this evening, Island Reflections Dance Theater Company, to share a brief dance presentation. Who knows about Island Reflections? All right, excellent. So Island Reflections is a Hartford-based arts organization founded by renowned teacher, choreographer, and performer Stephen D. Hankey, and 6 founding company members, focusing on teaching and presenting the cultural arts and historical significance of art forms from the Caribbean to youth and adults. This evening, their presentation is entitled Belle, with choreography by Stephen D. Hankey, music by Kassav, costumes by Sunny Salina, and performed by Melissa Craig, Tina Webley, and Lael Marie Williams. Please join me in welcoming Island Reflections.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Stephen D. Hankey, the Artistic Director of Island Reflections Dance Theater Company. Just to give you a brief history on what we're about to see today. It's the Bel Air, B-E-L-A-I-R, then it's broken down to B-E-L-E. So it was in the 18th century, late 18th century, the French plantations owner came to the Caribbean. They took with them a joie rivere to the plantation, that joyous energy of them. That included many French balls in the great houses in which they performed courtly dances of Europe, such as the quadrille, the minuet, the jig, and mazurka. The belly dance is one of the most popular dances in the Caribbean, especially in the French-speaking islands. The dance is a hybrid of African and European influences. So, during slavery, the French colonizers would have their dance balls in the great houses. The house slaves, those who work in the great house, would have done all the chores, but were not allowed to be in those ball presentations. So they would hid themselves in the great houses. And when those balls were performed, they would look on. And when they get their leisure time, after much harvest was done and hard work, they will teach the field slaves about those dances. And they mimic their slave masters in performing those dances. The movements would be a combination of African and European influence steps, which mimic, again, the French colonizers. The enslaved Africans show off their movements by doing ceremonial bows. They would also show sweeping movements. And as they move on, there's 14 types of ballet dances in the Caribbean. We have the cabinet ballet, which is the introduction. Today you're going to see most of the cabinet ballet, which is the introduction and the greeting of. You have the chevalon, the cabinet, the Kalinda ballet, and the Congo ballet. Some of the countries that perform these dances are Martinique, Guadeloupe, St. Lucia, Trinidad and Tobago, Dominica. The costume mimicked the time period of the French autocracy, where the women were clad in their Victorian age dresses and head wraps. The ballet dance is a creation of movements from traditional African idiom and Caribbean traits due to the fast-changing landscape and musical instrument. So today we're going to have the ballet dance. You're going to see the beginning of the cabinet. Hope you enjoy.
Eu quero ver também. Ça calme bien. Ça finit tout? Mbagasan aye. Ça finit tout? Qui ça qui vient vous souhaiter qu'à faire comme moi? Vous allez lever la main.
Amazing community resource right here in Hartford, Connecticut. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Fiona Vernal.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This project builds on an oral history collection initiated by the Connecticut. I'm so short, I have to be adjusted. An oral history collection initiated by the Connecticut Historical Society when I was just a graduate student at Yale University. The goal was to document the contributions of West Indian migrants to the greater Hartford region and to the state of Connecticut and to the United States. Since then, I have been working to build the oral history collection with the goal of interviewing at least 100 people for this phase of the project, and the longer-term goal is to scale it up to 500 interviews that will be an online database for the oral history collection. I have been waiting for my graphic designer to show up, but she's not here, and since we're recording, I wanted to say a special thanks to Stephanie Orts, who has the amazing ability to take the words that I write, to pair them with the images, and to make sure, as I told her, to please capture Mr. Bennett's smile. Everybody knows Mr. Bennett for his smile, among other things, and she has this wonderful ability of being able to take what I write and bring it out on this amazing canvas. So I really wanted to say thank you to Stephanie, and I'm sorry that you weren't able to make it. Thank you also to those of you who offered your photographs and your time and who offered feedback and contacts. Since we are trying to build out to about 500, we do need to have more people identified, especially those who came here in the 1940s and the 1950s. We have had some generous support from Trinity College. We have generous support from Trinity College this summer to take the exhibit in two new directions, two very important directions. One of them is to pair these stories with the story of African American migrants who also came here from the South to work in tobacco and also settle down in Hartford, as well as Puerto Rican migrants. So this exhibit is going to continue to be built out so that we can tell the stories of these three groups in concert, so that we do not have to have our histories told separately. With that in mind, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of how the exhibit is structured. We have data panels on the wall back there. You may not realize that because they're underneath the glass, so if you have a moment, please make sure you take a look at that. We also have the individual stories of particular members and then the general themes. Tonight, I'm pleased to premiere two exhibition panels. So the exhibit has been designed to be modular. That means the next time you see it, most likely at the Windsor Historical Society, there will be 12 more new panels that will be added to it that will continue to be built out. We're also working with the State Department of Education and with CREC to build out teacher workshops so that these stories of African American, Puerto Rican, and West Indians can be featured more prominently in the curriculum that our students are being subjected to, because a lot of it does not address the contributions of the varied and diverse population in Greater Hartford and in the state. And with that, I am going to cede the rest of my time to our two honored guests. I am pleased tonight to premiere these two new panels. So Mr. Kenneth P. Bennett, the oldest living member of the West Indian Social Club, whose panel recounts his history from the 1940s when he came here to this moment here when we can celebrate his life. And one of the goals of this exhibit is to celebrate people's lives when they're alive, when their family members can help so that their family members and the wider community can understand the living legends that they have amongst them. And so I'm going to ask at first Mr. Bennett to come up, and then I'd also like to premiere the panel of Barbara Frankson, who recounts the very important legacy of her grandmother, a pillar of strength who taught her how to walk with God, and who I met last September and who has become a very important person on my own personal journey. So we'll hear from Mr. Bennett first, and then we will hear from Barbara. Thank you so much.
Mistress of ceremony, distinguished guests, friends all. As one of the honorees, it gives me great pleasure to be here. And I hope each and every one of you may enjoy yourself and have a jolly evening. Again, thank you all for coming. And anything else you want to ask me after the other brother deliver himself, I'm right here. I'm 95 years of age. Again, thank you much.
And now I'd like to call up Miss Barbara Frankson.
Good evening. As my family know, I can't be so short-spoken. So I thank you first and foremost to God. This is a humbling moment for me. I never thought I would be standing here today not knowing my history, but everyone knows that it's not how we come into the world, it's what we do in the world to make an impact. So the reason I'm giving honor to God is before I was in my mother's womb, he knew I'd be standing here today. So I'm going to tell you guys what I do when I go into schools. I give a disclaimer. I'm a woman of God, and I make no illusions about that. And I know they've taken God out of the schools and they've taken God out of certain places. But when I go in, he comes out my mouth because he's in my heart. So that's the disclaimer I'm giving, and I got that from my grandmother, Catherine Elizabeth Douglas, who lived to be 105 years old. I honor her today. She planted seeds in me that I didn't even know she was planting until I had my own relationship with God. I was 9 years old when I came into this country. 9 years old. I was sponsored by Mrs. Miller. She's sitting there today. She sponsored my mother, my grandmother, my brother, my sister, and myself. At a time when race relations was probably worse than it is today. She didn't see color, and I thank you so much, Mrs. Miller, for that. She saw a person, and she's changed all of our lives. And every life, Maya Angelou says that every life that you touch is a legacy you leave. So she touched 5 of our lives. That's it. She touched 5 of our lives, and now I go internationally and I touch lives because you thought so much of my mother. You taught so much of my mother that today I stand in honor and say thank you. My mother is not alive to see this, but I thank you because you've changed all her children's lives. Now, I had the opportunity to go to a predominantly white school when there were almost no blacks. There were 15 African Americans and 1 Hispanic. Mrs. Miller was my mother's part-time employee. My mother's full-time employee allowed her children to live in her house and have an education so we can have an opportunity, not based on the color of our skins, but the context of our character, as Martin Luther King so eloquently put it. So her full-time employees, we lived in the maids' quarters, not because that's where we had to, but my mother was like, she's not cleaning the rest of the house. So we lived in the maids' quarters. I was bullied from 4th grade to 11th grade. 4th grade to 11th grade, so that's why I go into the schools now, because I realized that my bullies saw something in me. They saw something in me that I couldn't even see in myself. See, I tell people all the time, a thief does not go into a house he doesn't feel there's valuables. If I had given up on myself, and there were times that I would, because, you know, people told me that I would amount to nothing. I would amount to nothing. But my grandmother would say, not my baba, not my baba. And when I was in college, I was homeless for a while. I slept in the garage, in my car, showered in the ladies' locker room. If I had to do it again, I would, because it made me the woman I am today. It made me the woman I am today, so my kids can offer me no illusions. We all sit in here, and we're all from different places. And when I thought about what to speak, and I told you that my speaking is longer. Thank you so much for making yours short, because, you know, I'm a little... So when I thought about what to speak about today, I asked my friend, I can't, you know, Fiona, I asked her, what should I speak about? And she says, well, you know, go to who you know, which is really God. God gives me, this is how I ended up here. I wanted to give back to my community. And I didn't even know it was a contest. And all God gave me was a title. And the title was Never Forget Where You Came From. So I want everyone under the sound of my voice, no matter where you are in life, never forget where you came from. Because everyone in here is one of 3 places. You're either in a storm, coming out of a storm, or approaching a storm. And it doesn't matter where you are, because there's one constant. My tribute says pain, passion, and purpose. I had to go through pain to have a passion for what I do, to know what my purpose is. Our purpose is always about what? People, right? Our purpose is always about people. Every single one of us in here has a purpose. Like I said before, we were in our mother's womb. We do no injustice to our families that were maids and farm workers. If we don't come and get our education, if we don't do, no one can stop you. Anything that you put in your mind to do, you can do it, because we were all designed in purpose. Our Father is the King. So anything that you want, you can do. So what I have to say to everyone is this. Remember, the 2, as Mark Twain said, the 2 most important days of a person's life is when you're born and when you discover why you're born. Well, I was born, and now I've discovered why I was born. And my purpose is to go internationally as an inspirational speaker for God, because my grandmother started that legacy in me. From the time I was a little kid, she was planting those seeds, and they say each generation comes back greater. So I stand here to represent her and my mother, who sacrificed. I didn't see her. She left when I was 3. I didn't see her again until I was 9. So I want to ask my sister Sonia to come up for a second. every life you touch is a legacy, okay? Mrs. Miller, my sister, is a retired nurse. You touched her life. I'm about to scare everybody else in the room about what I do, but my full-time job, I work for the Department of Revenue Services in their audit department. And the whole front row there, excluding my sweetheart, are all agents and examiners. So be nice to them, please. Okay, so the reason I called my sister up here is Mrs. Miller. I'll go get. I want to acknowledge you publicly, and it's not just the flowers, it's the seeds. It's the seeds. This woman planted seeds, and her generation will be blessed because of the seeds that she did. Look, we look just like her, right? We do, right? Yes. I don't know why they're laughing. But it doesn't matter. My whole thing is, just like she helped us out, it's up to us. When we reach, even when we're going through things, because when you're going through things, turn around. Biggest gift is to give. So when we're going through, turn around and help someone. Because she helped us when she didn't even know what we looked like. And Ellen, when I talked, that's her daughter right there taking the picture. And Ellen, when I talked about Ellen, Ellen said, you know, your mother was my mom. And she agreed. So I thank you guys for listening, but I wanted to show you, this is it. It's a legacy. And for my family, could you stand up, please? All my family members, including my coworkers. And my That's what legacy looks like. That is what legacy. You know, they had a hard day, and some of them are probably going, oh, come on, Auntie Barbara, cut it out. So I thank you guys. I love you all, and I thank you. These are the legacies that we leave. So I leave this with you guys to say, it is up to you what you do for life. But if you died tomorrow, what would you leave? Know your purpose. It's all to do with people. Ashe. Know your purpose. Know your purpose. God gave you a purpose. Stop looking at your struggles and know what your purpose is and do your God-given duty. Because we are here to help others. And if we don't do anything, all our ancestors' work was in vain. Legacy. Thank you. No. And I thank you all. Thank you all so much for what you do. And family is everything. And sometimes we have our own disagreements, but we love hard and we love strong. And everyone in this room is my family. Because guess what? We all came from the same seed. Doesn't matter what we look like. Cut us, we bleed red. Thank you so much for listening to me.
I think you all understand now why I ceded my time to her. I just wanted to say, especially for the young people in here who think that history is about memorizing names and dates and places. Yes, it is that, because we need the names and the dates and the places of our people who have contributed to the history of this country and this state. But I am so lucky and so honored as a historian to sit down with Mr. Bennett for 2 hours and sit down with Barbara for 2 hours. Maybe not so lucky to have the 35-page transcript after that, and then to try to take that 35-page transcript and share just a snippet with you in this exhibit. I thank you so much for coming. The last thing I want to say is, now that you know who I am, you know that my program is tight, I start on time, and I will dismiss on time. You are free to go. Thank you so much.